I'm feeling festive today, so I'm wearing my favorite hat and hanging out with you as we talk a little bit more about podcasting. Today, something very interesting that often gets forgotten in the shuffle, which is podcast etiquette. We do have basically a podcaster's code that you should know about. We all know that communicating effectively and keeping our promises can really make or break an episode. So whether it's a big guest or even someone who's just starting out, you want to know how to be world-class, as always, with the Podcast Maestro. So stay with me and I'll share how mastering podcast etiquette can really make your show so reliable and welcoming. It's like just hanging out with a bunch of old friends. So stay tuned. I'll be right there.
Welcome to Launch It, the Podcast Maestro, your gateway to becoming a thought leader in your field. Dive into the world of elite podcasting and master the art of influence and inspiration. And now, podcast personality, award-winning author and actress, Anne Scottlin.
Hi, welcome back. As always, I'm Anne Scottlin, the Podcast Maestro, and today we're diving into something timeless, regardless of what season it is where you live. Podcast etiquette is always the same. So whether you're coordinating with your guests or making sure you're on time, these habits are imperative to running a successful podcast year-round. So before I jump in, please, as always, like and subscribe and copy and paste this link to someone who might love to hang out with us for a few minutes. Whether you're streaming live now with me or if it's later, that same link should work. So copy and paste, and I'll give you more opportunities to reach out to me later. So let's jump in. So communication with your guests. This is a piece of etiquette that cannot be underrated. Whether you're just sending them a pre-interview brief or you're showing up and actually recording on time, you show up on time, you record on time, respecting your guest's schedule is really crucial. That's one of the reasons why I do pre-interview interviews, if you will, prior to taping with a new guest, because I want to do a tech check. I have my producer do a tech check with the person, make sure everything in their setting is good to go. And also I get to kind of get their vibe. It doesn't really ruin the experience on the day. As I've said before, no small talk before you start taping, because otherwise you chatter on fun about relevant things that are happening in your life. And you're like, okay, let us record. Good morning. And everybody loses the vibe and it's just like, what? So yes, don't do that. But if you want to get to know them for 10 minutes before on a different day when you do your tech check, that is part of respecting their time and helping them respect yours, although we are talking about our etiquette, not theirs at the moment. Guests can be really interesting, and if you aren't on the same page with them, things can get a bit awkward. I don't know if I'm sure you remember the Joe Rogan Experience once had Elon Musk on as a guest, or more than once, I'm sure. And while the episode really became famous because Musk started smoking on air, anyway, there was a noticeable moment of tension in that episode when Musk kind of got really caught off guard by the direction of the conversation. So this really highlights the importance of communicating your expectations clearly with your guests beforehand, especially when you're navigating a high profile person or really complex topics, something that could cause someone to react poorly or unexpectedly. You see this a lot in interview shows on TV and talk shows with celebrity guests. Think about how you can carefully approach. Now, some hosts are provocative by the nature of the show. Even then, you should give your client heads up as much as possible, at least give them the full range of topics you may cover, and then tell them if there's one here that you absolutely cannot touch, let me know, and then honor that. So you're really setting a tone of etiquette. And do your research. How many times have you heard an unprofessional podcast where the host totally murders the guest's name, cannot pronounce the guest's name right, and maybe doesn't even know their background? I've been on shows where they didn't know my background. So Anne Scotland, it's Scotland, L-I-N, Anne Scotland. So what is it you do? I'm like, I am coming on your show as a note of respect to help support your brand. Why would you not have at least researched what I do? So do that for your guests, do the research. Sean Evans on Hot Ones, he always starts with that well-researched intro about his guest. It really helps put him at ease and sets this respectful tone. And Scott also has to personally stick to a tight filming schedule, which is interesting because you think, oh, he's already got his own fabulous show. He's Scott Evans. No, he has a lot of sacrifices to make, as does anyone in streaming shows of any kind, because he has to stick to a really tight shooting schedule because he often works with celebrities. They're on tight time constraints. And this is another good consideration when you decide whether or not to have a guest interview format or to be a solo host or to just be a co-host, or you're going to have guests. Like, these are really important things in deciding the kind of show you want. I have 2 Hollywood actress friends who are coming to see me literally in 2 days. And they're flying in. We've been planning for ages and ages to get together and do a girls' weekend. And so they're flying in and not going to be together long, like 48 hours. So it's a very short amount of time. So you want maximum impact, maximum time together. And one of them just called me and said, I just booked NCIS and I have to shoot the whole day that I was going to be flying. This is what happens when you deal with celebrities, with actors and actresses, and people who have really high profile careers that have time constraints that are completely beyond your control. You getting angry at a celebrity who has a shoot scheduled over the top of your episode is not going to improve your relationship with that celebrity, and is almost certainly not going to give you a good show. So just know when you go into guests with names or brands or with high profile, these things can change on a moment's notice. Now, she's still coming, but she has to fly in a day later. And, we'll miss some of our time together as all 3 of us girlfriends, but she's still coming. Good for her. Love her. But this is like huge when people book major shows, and both these actresses have spectacular careers. One has just finished shooting as a season regular for a whole series that's coming out in a few weeks. So this is me just being grateful I get to spend some time with them. Precious souls. Love these girls. Really good humans. That's all I can say. So before you write off actors and actresses, know there are some really beautiful souls out there. Okay, back to getting on topic. What I'm saying is, when you are dealing with celebrities, a little etiquette goes a long way. When you're dealing with anyone, someone you barely know that's going to be a guest, a little etiquette goes a long way. It really sets up your class. It sets you up as a world-class show. There was a show I think I mentioned recently, a guy who had me on who researched me in such depth that it was almost uncomfortable, because he researched things from my entire life, things I'd never even knowingly mentioned on air before. And he started asking me those questions right off the bat. Now, none of it was inappropriate, so fair enough. But I also was a little taken by surprise. Now, I think that's what he was going for. But quite honestly, I like to have a little warning. I'm good on my feet. I can usually just jump in and meet that host where they are. But a lot of guests aren't that way. A lot of personalities can't just snap to and go, oh, really unexpected question, boom. If they start asking you about something personal or a family matter or a divorce or a political question, these are things you should know in advance. If you're not a political show, or if you're not a current events show, then you should have a really clear policy that your guest sees even before they come on as your guest about what isn't permitted. First of all, what language is or isn't permitted. Is it family friendly? Is it not? We have the full range when it comes to streaming TV, video podcasting, audio podcasting. You need to have a set of standards. Try to be reasonable, but also, if my policy on my show is no politics, period. We have plenty of that going on in the world. I say we can have one great show where we have fun, where we learn stuff, and we don't have to go into that whole stressful scenario in politics. There's plenty of shows for that. I have no desire to compete with that. All right. So a couple other things real quick on your etiquette. Set these expectations early. Like I just said, telling them what is and isn't expected, what the terms of the show are, what's the length, what's the format, what can or can't be discussed. Now, that can be from your perspective, your preference, or it can also be asking them, is there anything that I should not discuss or bring up with you that is your preference? Again, unless you are a show that asks anything and you're famous for it, and the person who comes on knows that they could be grilled in the moment, unless that's your style, then don't surprise people unduly. Give them a chance. Give them a chance to put their best foot forward. Don't make them look bad. So, The Breakfast Club, of course, nationally syndicated radio show, for example, is hosted by DJ Envy and Angela Yee and Charlemagne the God. It's a major platform for celebrity and political guest appearances, right? So in this case, politics are fine. And the show is known for its candid and sometimes really controversial interviews. But the hosts always give those guests a heads up reminder, remembering to tell them the show's style, preventing any on air surprises, even if that saying, expect on air surprises, which is going to make the guests feel awkward and nervous and uncomfortable. But if their guest is still okay with that, they sign off on that. You need to have a waiver. But so you see what I'm saying? Set the tone. Even if there's going to be surprises, make sure they know there's going to be surprises. Make sure your guests know there's going to be surprises. Okay, before we go to the break, I'm going to talk to you just for a minute about keeping your word and punctuality. So when you make a promise to a guest or to your clients or to your audience, really be sure to deliver. Whether you're featuring a guest, whether you're mentioning a sponsor, whether you're promoting content, keeping your word is world-class way of building trust. Keep your word, show up. If you tell someone you'll call them back, call them back. If you make a mistake, apologize and explain what happened and ask how you can make it right. Oprah's book club had, this is an old story, but I'll never forget it. They boosted sales of so many books over the years, as you know, if you love to watch that show at all. Way back in 2006, there was a controversy surrounding the book called A Million Little Pieces. I don't know if you remember that book by James Fry. And after Oprah selected that book, they found out that Fry had embellished key parts of the memoir. So Oprah had to publicly address that controversy on her show, holding Fry accountable while still following through on the feature. She committed to the book, she committed to the show, she committed to Fry. She's also committed to her audience and her standards. So it really highlights, the importance of doing your thorough research in advance, being sure everyone's read the book cover to cover before it goes on the show, at least the people that matter running your show, even when you're faced with unexpected challenges, because what is presented on your show reflects on you and your brand personally, but you can handle it professionally and gracefully, as Oprah did. So much we can always learn from her. And being on time, punctuality shows respect, showing up on time, showing early. Sign on 10 to 15 minutes early so that when your guest gets there, you get there. There's always someone who runs late, but there's a lot of people out there in the world who run early. And they'll literally if you're starting at the top of the hour, they'll be sitting on their computer ready to go, or if not in your studio, but if they're remote, they'll be sitting on their computer ready to go often a half an hour before you tape. So if you are showing up right on the dot, it makes them stressed. Remember their feelings about where are they? Did they forget me? Am I at the right URL? Like, what is happening? Come on, visit with them, or come on and say hi, or have your producer come on and say hi and turn some music on, or whatever that is, just so they know they're being cared for and that they're not out there just hanging for that half an hour. Another show, a good example of this is Hot Ones, which is a streaming show. It's that popular web series hosted by Sean Evans. And it's where all the guests are interviewed while, if you've watched the show, yes, eating increasingly spicy chicken wings. There's always something that can set your show apart, right? But it's not the chicken wings alone that has made that show so successful. Sean has always been really faithful to doing the research on his guests, to having an engaging style. Those are the things that made him a viral hit, especially with those celebrity guests. Really doing the research, being on time, speaking his word. And that's how he got widely expected for such excellent guest introductions and interviews, because he prepares. And he, again, another host, you have to work so tightly with those celebrity schedules. and start on time to ensure a smooth experience. If they say I have 19 minutes, they mean I have 19 minutes, as in from the time they walk from their car into a building to sit down in a studio or at a computer and turn it on, and their driver's picking them up at 20 minutes. They're not kidding. They're not being a pain in the arse. They are saying, like, this is it, and this is what I have to give you. So be respectful and understanding of that. And then finally, right before we go to commercial, for real this time, follow through with your post interview. We had an episode where I talked a lot about that. And I mentioned after recording, part of good etiquette, send a thank you note, send them actual mail if it's there's someone who will actually receive it at an address, or send them an email. Promote their work as promised. If you offered to promote their show, their links, their websites, any other number of other things, be sure that you did it. And just that simple handwritten note or even an email can really strengthen your relationship with that guest. And if it's a really fun guest that you want to have back, or it's a high profile guest that you really would love to have come back on your show next year, you're keeping that relationship open. All right, we're going to go to commercial. And when I come right back, we're going to talk about etiquette during high days, holy days, holidays, summer vacations, all those good things, because streaming goes on. So how do we deal with those tough times of year? In the meantime, check out the commercial and let me know if there's anything I can do to help you with your podcast. I'll be right back.
Picture this. You have worked your whole life to become an expert, a leader, a change maker, but you're so busy, most people will never discover you to recognize your work. Anne Scottlin, founder of Podcast Maestro, understands this challenge. With a decade of Hollywood experience and a proven track record as a business coach, Anne turns seasoned professionals into thought leaders through the art of podcasting. Podcast Maestro offers plug-and-play services, handling everything from pre-production to distribution, so you can focus on your message while Anne and her team manage the rest. Leverage Anne's Hollywood production knowledge, strategic business insight, and social media expertise to amplify your reach and impact. If you're ready to elevate your voice, connect with Anne Scottlin at Podcast Maestro and begin your podcast journey today.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's episode on etiquette. Etiquette in podcasting, whether it is video podcasting, audio podcasting, streaming TV, they all fall under the same umbrella these days. So what is the etiquette? And we've talked about several great things already and used some really good shows as example. I talked about communication, do your research, set the guests' expectations early, keep your word, be punctual, and show respect. Do follow through post interviews. What else can you do? Well, there are these very busy times of year where guests are harder to book. Now, there's a few ways to deal with this. Sometimes you can pre-record around their schedule, or if you're live stream only and only live stream, you may have to be a little creative in how you book these. Really understand your guests' time, especially around summer vacations, that they have stuff scheduled with their kids, with major holidays, holy days. Offer them flexible scheduling or suggest recording early. One thing you could do is send them 3 shoot date options. That's something you or your assistant could do to help them have that option. And then if none of those work, say, or please suggest a date that works for you, preferably a Tuesday or Thursday. And don't be surprised if some of them are booking out over 6 months and sometimes more. That is not unusual. So be sure that you always have your shows lined up over the next, say, 8 to 12 weeks that you're right up to, so you never get stuck without anything to broadcast. Tim Ferriss' show, he often changes his recording schedule to accommodate those really high profile guests. And he often records early to match their schedules. Like, that's just how it has to be. You know, we see all of these TV shows that we forget aren't live, like Saturday Night Live or anything else. Like, basically nothing is really, really live in the moment, exactly at that moment in time, because people have to have flexibility. Sometimes there needs to be editing done. If it's a high profile guest, it has to be approved. So just know that you have to be flexible in order to help them. And sometimes that means pre-recording. Now, you could come on and do live stream for 5 minutes and then say, I just finished a conversation with So, and I cannot wait to show you what we talked about. Here he is, right? And just launch then the recorded portion and then finish in your live if you want to take questions from your guests that you can answer from your followers, from your listeners, or whatever. And another thing that Tim Ferriss he's even discussed on air how important being flexible has been in having that really relaxed, engaging interview vibe that he gets. So always double check early, confirm your guest's availability, and plan ahead, and double check and remind them coming up to the date. Often there are honest, innocent mistakes, or someone on their team accidentally misbooked it, misscheduled it, and learn to be flexible. Always have a backup plan. Instead of carrying all that frustration or resentment with a guest who doesn't show up for whatever reason, always have a backup plan. And your listeners, your viewers will basically never know. Now, if you've promised the guest, this guest is coming next episode, you can say, they had a crisis, had to step away. We're still doing it. Don't worry, they'll be back. In the meantime, today, I've got something amazing lined up for you. Even if that just all happened in the last 20 minutes, you always have something to share and do, right? So just know that. And find ways to keep things seasonal and fun, but also evergreen. You're like, well, that's kind of hard. How do you do that? It can be really a fun science all in itself, keeping it evergreen, but also relevant. So you can add a light sort of seasonal touch to your questions. In winter, you could say something about, so have you done anything cozy lately? Just wrapped up indoors in your favorite blanket and had your favorite hot drink. But you don't have to say in January, right? And you don't have to say, because it could be literally any time of year. A really good example is Jerry Seinfeld on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Love that show. He really uses that relaxed conversational style that adapts to whatever season he's shooting in, offering this relatable tone without being tied to a specific time. So he makes it feel like you're present with him in real time, even though could be way pre-recorded and is pre-recorded and edited. So for example, and a suggestion, if you're recording in autumn, for example, you might want to ask your guests a seasonal question that doesn't make your show not evergreen, but is still seasonally relevant. So you could say in autumn, you could say to a guest, so here's a question for you. So before any holiday or holidays, like how do you stay productive in your own business, in your own schedule? So would be relevant to that time of year, but it could also be relevant to any time of year and any holiday. The key is really to frame it in a way that it feels evergreen. So even if leaves aren't falling, the principle stays relevant, and you can kind of, if you like to have fun and weave these things in, it can actually be really fun. Like how close can I get without stating the exact time of year while bringing the essence of that time of year into the conversation? And sometimes there's slower seasons in different ways, and depending on how your episodes work, whether they're daily or weekly or seasonal or by seasons of production seasons. But take some time where there's a little less activity. Let's say you pre-record your show and you did all your pre-recording and you wrapped it up, let's say at the end of October, and you took December, November off, or December, November, January off, because those shows are already been pre-recorded to air. Use this downtime. Use it as a season of reflection. Thank guests, thank audiences, reach out with a phone call, with an email, with a message. Show your appreciation. Ask how they're doing. Ask what you can do to help support them and their brand. The Property Podcast with Rob Bentz and Rob Dix, Rob and Rob, of course, sends out a special thank you episode every single year. They tape a whole separate episode every single year that acknowledges their listeners, all their guests, really helps feature and highlight different people from their audience and guests, and really builds loyalty. And they're kind of famous for that. And it's such a lovely gesture to just say, thank you all for listening, for being here as fans. Thanks to everyone who made this whole year possible. It's fun, it's cozy, and it's a great way to recap the amazing kind of caliber of guests you've been having, the contributions they've made, and also help re-promote their brand. Now you can hashtag everyone in the whole episode this time. to continue to help promote them, and send them an email saying, by the way, I just mentioned you and showed a flashback of you being on the show 6 months ago on our streaming show this week. I also re-promoted all the hashtags in your websites and put it in social media. Just wanted you to know we're always thinking of you. And if we can ever help support you, or if you'd love to be on the show again at any time, please just let us know. We would love to do that. So it's kind of effortless, honestly. It just takes a little bit of thought. So as you move through the year, whether it's spring, winter, autumn, fall, take a moment to reflect on how you can show up as a professional, courteous host, how you can be world class by having shining etiquette. And trust me, your guests and your audience, they will notice. So now it's your turn. As always, go out and try to practice these tips. Try on podcast etiquette and see how it goes. Send me your stories of how it goes. Send me ideas that you've come up with. Maybe you came up with a really amazing thank you card idea, or a thank you video, virtual thank you card that you tape and send to each individual person, or something completely unrelated. But if you have great ideas, I'm sure the rest of my audience here at Launch It would love to hear them, and I would love to share them on the air. Send those in, send your ideas, your experiences, your stories, and of course, always send your questions, your topic suggestions as well. And if you'd like co-host help or producing help, if you would like me to be a co-host on your show, or if you would like me to prepare, produce, and promote your show from A to Z, so all you have to do is show up for 20 minutes or 40 minutes, have a chat and leave, and have everything else magically done for you, let me know. You can visit me on my website, annescottlin.com. If you're just listening, that's ANNESCOTTLIN, annescottlin.com. You can email me there as well, or directly contact at annescottlin.com, and me or my team will get back to you. And watch my social media for one of my upcoming events that will be happening in the next few weeks. Whatever platform you like to follow me on, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, we're there. We're at all of them. And in the meantime, have an amazing week, and email me your thoughts and questions. I'll be streaming again here live as always, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and 4 p.m. GMT on Wednesdays. Cheers, and see you next time.